Hello, thank you for watching this video from us here at Cookdown, where today we're going to look at raising alerts in SCOM from about anywhere with the power of webhooks. Now this capability is part of a suite of products called Connection Center from us here at Cookdown. It's a management pack that you import into SCOM, and it lets you both send SCOM alerts to about anywhere and raise SCOM alerts to about anywhere too. We have deepened bespoke integrations for ITSM tools like ServiceNow and Sharewell, but also for messaging platforms like Slack and Teams. We also allow you to push SCOM alerts about anywhere with webhooks, which is where these logos come in that just came on now. But we also let you raise SCOM alerts from anywhere with webhooks as well. And here are just some of the sorts of platforms that let you push alerts via webhooks in the first place to send alerts in that way. And it's this left side of the picture we're going to be talking about today with this video. And all of this is possible without writing a single line of code, which is quite awesome. Alright, so let's dig into raising alerts using webhooks then. So with Connection Center, the easy bit is raising alerts. The hard bit is raising events, which is where our magic comes in. It all will become clear in a second. The basic building blocks required to do this are you need a system that's going to send in alerts or notifications of some sorts. We're going to talk about this as if it were Prometheus for today, although actually we're going to be using Postman to simulate what Prometheus would do. And Connection Center, which is our management pack inside of SCOM, providing webhooks capabilities. Now, with our management pack, we'll be raising events, not alerts, events, and that's because all routes to alert come in via event. You have to have an event first, so we'll be raising events. They're going to be evaluated by a rule in SCOM that's part of our management pack, and it will raise an alert on every single event. Relatively straightforward. And guess what? You're going to get from that rule a bunch of alerts for every event that is received by a webhook. So relatively straightforward in terms of the end-to-end flow and use case. Every single thing you push in from your source system gets raised as an alert. All done via UI, all really quite easy to do. The second demo we're going to show you today is the more advanced use case of simply raising events from webhooks. The basic building blocks here are exactly the same. You still have a source system sending alerts or notifications into SCOM, into our Connection Center management pack via webhook. These are raised as events and only as events. Now, events in isolation are not very useful, but the thing that's really cool about them is it means you can use all of SCOM's native capabilities to raise alerts in a more sort of granular way. So you could, for instance, create a monitor that goes red when a certain type of event is received and raises an alert, and then resolves itself and closes off the alert when a different type of event is received. You have all of SCOM's native power available to you. There are also some additional sort of bells and whistles on the event capabilities of Connection Center. For example, you can associate the events that are received with a specific object in SCOM, which is not currently possible with the alerts capability. So you get some extra capabilities as well. So I guess without further ado, let's have a look and see how it works. So here we are in SCOM, and we're looking in the administration pane, and we're under our Connection Center Management Packs UI, which is an administration. And you can see here that this pack is loosely structured by what you're looking to push or pull into or out of SCOM. Alerts, events, maintenance mode entries, and we'll soon be adding objects to this list as well. But today we're going to talk about inbound. This is raising alerts from other places, and we're going to basically set up a listener in SCOM that will receive webhooks. So we go to add connection, and now we're going to create a listening connection, a webhook one. Here we go. You need to give this connection a name. Prometheus is what this one's going to be called, and we're going to enable it. And what you'll see here is this URL is the URL which you will be pushing your alerts to. You can also see in this URL that we accept API key if you like to configure it in such a way, and HTTPS, not by default, but it's possible to set it up with HTTPS as well. Not by default because it requires you configuring certs essentially to do it, which we can't do by default. The next thing you would do is provide a payload that looks like the sorts of webhooks you'll be receiving here. I don't have one of these, so what we're actually going to do is just next through this and come back to this in a minute. Because the other thing you could do here is once you stood up the listener, you can send a webhook to the listener and then come back through this wizard and say use the last received payload. Obviously I haven't set this webhook up, this listener up, so there is no last payload right now. And then we can use properties from it in shaping the alerts we're going to be raising. I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this Prometheus Alerts. Prometheus Alert. We're going to give all the alerts a priority and severity. Let's say these are medium, whether priority medium, severity critical. And then for now we're going to leave this default description. We're going to replace this with something specific when we've got some properties from a received webhook payload to use, but for now that will do the job. The custom fields of SCOM alerts, you can also pull bits of information from the webhook and stick them there too. We're not going to do that right now, but it's possible. This listener and all the config is stored in a management pack. I'm going to accept the default, which has a Connection Center one, and we're going to hit finish. This will create a listener, and it will take a little while for it to come online due to the nature of what we're doing in SCOM here. There we go, there it is. So now we're waiting for it to run a connection test, essentially. Check everything is good. And when that has happened, we'll be able to push in webhooks. So I'm going to copy and paste this listening endpoint URL. I haven't got an API key set up, so that's how it will stay for my demo. So I haven't actually got Prometheus, I have good old Postman, which I'm going to use to effectively synthesize the sorts of posts we would get. So I've pasted in my URL for my management server along with the ports. I've stripped out the API key stuff because we're not using one, we're doing a post in this case. And in the body here I have my webhook. This is exactly the same format, i.e. it's JSON and messages from Prometheus look like this. The final thing I need to do here is to, in my URL, replace the words management server with an actual management server. My management server is called ops19-scom01.cookdown.local. It has to be a management server, not a management group name, because we're sending to a specific server. And then we'd come and hit send, but let me just quickly go into the SCOM console and check. Yes, Prometheus is now connected, it's green. So the connection tests have passed, and the listener is up, fully created, and is heart beating essentially. So we're now going to send this in Prometheus, which hopefully... I can see that didn't work because I didn't select from the drop down that I'm pushing JSON, which I am. So I'm going to select JSON and push this again. Let's see what we got. Event inserted. Great. So that worked essentially. So now if we go back to SCOM and go to monitoring, and this is our active alerts. Hopefully, if we refresh after not too long, we should see an alert is received from source Prometheus, because that was the name of our connection. The alert itself will be more or less useless, as, oh, here we go, as we'll see, it's here. As it has my default description in it, not very helpful. But that's okay, as long as there has been an alert, we can use all of the information. If we open the actual alert up and go to the context here, we have in the in one of the parameters here, the actual raw JSON that was used, which is really useful, so you can see exactly what was sent, and no surprise, it's what I sent from Postman. But this is what we're going to use to shape the alert description. So now we're going to go back to administration, go back to Prometheus and modify our connection, and we're going to pick out some properties from the payload. And now you can see when I've gone to this screen, rather than it asking me to provide a sample, it's saying use the last received payload, and it's picked it up from that alert, which is great. So you can see in what was received here that essentially we have a parent property called alerts, then underneath that we have a child property called labels, and I'm going to pick on the alert name property under there. So on the next screen, I'm going to change my alert settings, the default template thing, and we're going to use some of the properties of the alert that has been received. And just from having a quick look through this payload, we have the parent property of alert, And then underneath it we have labels, and then under there we have alert name, and that's what we're going to pull through. Should return the word test. So how this works then in the alert description is we're going to start off by blowing away this default description, which I don't want to see, and we're going to put what we want in here. Now we can mix in here properties and text. The format we're going to be using for pulling the properties from the payload and modifying it is the liquid format. Full information is available kind of here under the more information link as to how liquid works and how to use it, but you can modify properties that are returned using the liquid format in a number of different ways, which is quite useful where the data you're receiving doesn't quite match your expectations. So just to illustrate this, we're going to do something very simple today. An alert has been received from, or titled rather, and then we're going to put in the alert name from the webhook received, and we do that in this way. So the parent property was alerts. If I just close that for a second, you'll see in the bottom section that what's returned is updated real time, and this is the object relating to all the alerts in the payload. But the way this is structured, you can receive multiple alerts in a single payload from Prometheus. So we have to specify here, we want the first one, and then we can dot walk the properties. So the next property was labels. And there we go, we can now see all of the properties that are underneath labels. So we have alert name, DC, instance, etc. And I'm going to pick the alert name property, so dot alert name. And there we go, we have the alert name returned. And I'm going to put this in quotes so it's clear. An alert has been received, title test. Let's pick another property from, let's see what's available to us. We'll stick it in quotes again. Alerts, first alert, dot label, labels plural. And what have we got? We could have, from the return here, we've got the alert name property we've used. We can have DC, we can have instance. Let's have instance, so dot instance is what we're going to pick. And you can see where this came from. The other thing that's possible is to use those custom fields of the alert to store data in as well. Just so I don't have to type this whole thing again, I'm just going to copy and paste this chunk, and we're going to go next. And we're going to use custom field 1, and we're going to pull into it another property. Let's take the quotes out of this one. We're going to pull the DC property. It was just simply called DC. Location, we're going to say this is location, and then it will return the DC property. If I go back to my payload, in this case it is definitely DC and it's called EU West 1, and there we go. If I were to now finish this change by finishing the wizard, the configuration that SCOM is running will be updated. This works like any other configuration change in SCOM, so SCOM will, being a distributed system, slowly propagate that change, so it may take a while for the change I just made to be made active and replace the current change. So I'm going to break the video here for a little bit of time so that change has time to propagate its way through SCOM and make its way to my management servers. So with any luck, that's been enough time. So we're going to go back into Postman and hit send on our alerts once more. It's been inserted as an event. If I go through to monitoring and smash the refresh key on my keyboard, with any luck, we should not be waiting too long for that alert to come through. There it is. Perfect. So you can see here that, well, custom field 1 is clearly updated with location U-West-1, perfect, and the description matches what we said it should, which is perfect. You can see in the source the name of the connection is used for that of the source, and the rule name is named after the alerts that we've hard-coded Prometheus alerts, which is useful when sort of filtering and sorting. But yeah, that worked exactly as expected, which is awesome. So the next thing to show you is the ability to raise events from webhooks. Now, you would think that would be simpler than raising alerts, because we effectively have raised events from which our alerts in the previous case were raised. And while that's true, we've enabled some cool extra features of the ability to raise events. So if I now go and modify this existing connection I created before I started recording, so we don't have to wait for the connection to be set up and be tested. it should be a bit quicker. I've also pushed in a webhook to this listener. You will see here it's called Prometheus Events. It gets a slightly different URL, /event rather than /alert. Prometheus Event. Everything else is the same here as with alerts so far. You can see the payload I sent a minute ago is here. It's exactly the same payload as I was using in the case of alerts, also from Postman. I've added in one property manually, which is the FQDN one. I say manually, it's in the Postman payload that I've sent up. And now we start to see the new stuff. So unlike with alerts, we have the ability to target specific objects against which to raise our events. You can either say leave it at the default, which is to raise events on the webhook object, which is the objects that we create when this connection is created, called Prometheus Events in this case, or we can raise them on a dynamic objects. And in this case, you're asked for pick a class that you want to target. The default is Windows Computer here, which I'm very happy with in this case. And then it asks you to specify the property for your Windows computers from the payload. And in my payload, it's underneath alerts, alert0.labels, perhaps if I can type, .fqdn, and there we go. That is the name of the fully qualified machine, and we're going to match that against the name property in SCOM. If I now go test criteria, if a match is found against this machine in SCOM, which it has been, located on objects, we know this will work, essentially. So we can now see that events will be raised against Windows computers using the name property against the FQDN portion of the webhook. On the next screen here, you can specify which event channel to use in the log for storing the events. I'm going to accept the default of a static one for all of them, but you can pick dynamic as well. Similar notion applies as with objects. You can specify that each event has a dynamic number or a static value. In this case, I'm going to pick static. We've got the level that the events are raised at. Again, this can be dynamic or static based on what's in the payload, and those are the default SCOM values selectable. So I'm going to leave that as informational for now. You can specify the login computer as something specific, or again in dynamic, exactly the same idea with liquid being used as in other places. You can specify the user to use as well. It's just a string here, so there's no requirement for this user to exist or be in AD, for example. And then you have your event description, which is a lot similar, like your alert description. In fact, for the sake of ease, I'm actually going to copy and paste that from my clipboard in. So there it is, pasted in, and we're going to change it because we're not raising alerts, we're raising events. So it's mildly different, but essentially the same gist. It's the same payload ultimately, so all the syntaxing works just fine. Again, if this were being done from afresh, we could pick where we wanted to save the configuration, and I'm going to hit finish. And what we're going to do then is wait for the configuration change to be put into effect. And while we're waiting, I'm going to come across here and go view events on the right hand side. By doing this, we can see what was previously received, along with other bits and pieces. This is a heartbeat to show that the events listener is healthy. Here we go. This is the event that I sent in that we used as the sort of base point for our changes that we made a second ago. So here we go. This is the raw JSON as before. It's available in the event itself, and all of the information is here, including our default description that we changed a moment ago, raised as informational. All the fields were set as expected. So we're going to leave this open, push this to one side, come back into the SCOM console, and we're going to wait until our change has been pushed through SCOM to the management server. Hopefully that's been enough time. So now I'm going to go back into Postman and hit send once more. And well, that's a positive start. Event inserted. The other thing that's interesting about this return is attached to a specific machine. So the object lookup looks like it's worked. So the config must be live. So we're going to go in back into SCOM now, and we're going to go to monitoring, and we're going to find the specific Windows computer against which we are pushing events. Sorry. So it was this one. So if we now open the events for this machine, what I'm expecting to see at the top, yes, there it is our event. Ta-da! Look, the description matches expectations as to all the port numbers. There's the raw JSON, and obviously by the fact I found it here, it is against the correct object. So with this, you can do everything you would be able to do in SCOM natively to alert based on events that are coming into each individual machine, and that is the true power of Connection Center Webhooks Inbound, the ability to join all of these things together and get exactly what you want from any system that supports the ability to push via webhook. And that's it, guys. So hopefully you like what you've seen today. If you do, go to cookdown.com/connection center, where you can take a trial of everything that we've shown today. You can book a demo if you want to see a bit more, and ultimately you can ask us anything you like, which is really important because this is a particularly technical topic, webhooks, more so than some of our other integrations, which are also at this address. So you can ask us any question you like too. All right. Thank you very much for watching this video today.